Okay, next thing is like this. What happens if somebody cut a piece of meat with a hot piece of meat with a dairy knife? So you're cutting into the meat. So what happens is that because it's hot, the taste of milk that was in the knife is now going out into the meat, and the taste of the meat is now going into the blade of the knife. So the din is like this. Because it was used that day, so there's a fresh taste of milk in the meat now. So you need 60 times in the meat against the part of the blade that went into the meat. So let's say this is a piece of meat, a hot piece of meat, and this is a dairy knife, okay? And this is the handle, and this is the blade, okay? So I'm cutting the meat. I'm not using the whole blade. I'm cutting, let's say, 3/4 of the blade is cutting the meat. So the din is I need 60 times in the meat against the part of the blade that cut the knife, that cut the meat. Now what happens if I don't know, you don't know exactly, so then you have to go by the whole blade. You don't need to go by the handle, because the handle didn't cut the meat, okay? The handle probably didn't even touch the meat. It definitely didn't cut the meat. So then, when you cut the meat, you need 60, for the meat to be kosher, again, because the dairy knife was used that day, so it's a fresh taste of milk in the knife. So you need 60 times in the piece of meat against the part of the blade that cut the meat. Okay? Now, besides the fact, even if you have 60 times the amount, it's a big piece of meat, but then you also need, in the place where, let's say you cut the meat in half with the knife, okay? So then, besides you need 60 times the amount, the area that was cut with the knife, because it came in direct contact with pressure of the knife, so it's called in Hebrew, duchke de sakina. It's Aramaic, really. Duchke de sakina means the pressure of the knife. So therefore, it's not stam a hot spoon touching a hot piece of meat. You're actually pressuring it. So the thing is, you need to cut off a little piece of meat where the knife cut it. There's an argument if you just need what's called kedei klipa. Kedei klipa means you have to cut it in a way that it cuts a very thin piece, but it has to cut a whole piece, not crumble up. Or other people say you need what's called kedei netila, 2 centimeters. In other words, you have a dairy knife, right, hot meat, the meat is hot, the knife was used that day for milk. So when you cut the meat, let's say you cut it in half, so if you have 60 times in the meat against the blade, it's fine. But the place that you cut the meat, you're going to need to cut off 2 centimeters. Just to cut off from both sides, the place where you cut it, cut off 2 centimeters and throw it out. And the rest of the meat would be allowed. What happens, though, if the knife wasn't used that day for dairy? Okay, so we learned already, if it wasn't used for 24 hours, the taste of meat, a taste of milk, in the knife is not real milk, it's blemished milk. Okay, so then when I cut the piece of meat, even if there's no 60 times the amount, it's still kosher. Why is it kosher? Because it's a blemished taste of milk. It's not real taste of milk. Nevertheless, you should still cut off a little piece of 2 centimeters, because of the pressure of the knife, even though it wasn't used for 24 hours, you should cut off a little bit of the meat to make it no problem. What?
Is there a halachic ruling about kedei klipa versus kedei netila?
It's a machlekes in poskim, so it's better if you can cut kedei netila, would be better, because then it's according to all the poskim. Okay, but the bottom line is, now, if it wasn't used that day, for milk, so the meat, even if it didn't have 60 times the amount, is good, but you still need to cut off a little piece of the meat where the knife cut it. Now, 1 second. What happens though if you didn't just cut the meat in half, you slice the meat. You cut 10 slices into the meat. So now, you're going to have a bigger problem. Because you're going to have to cut off 2 centimeters, plus you're cutting more, so again, it's 60 times the amount. It's going to be a very big problem.
Times each cut?
Yeah, so it's going to be a problem.
Well, what kind of knife did you use now?
Huh?
Did you use a good knife?
Yeah, any knife. I mean, if it's not cold, if it's not hot anymore, you can use any knife to cut it off, as long as it's clean. A meat knife. That's it.
But when you wash it, it has to be 24 hours, or if you wash it,
No, if you wash it, it still needs 24 hours because the taste is inside the knife, inside the blade. Okay,
How hard does it have to be to find a
that you need pressure to cut it. That you need pressure.
So if the knife is very sharp and
I'll give you an example. One second. I'll give you an example. It doesn't matter. A sharp knife, you still need pressure. I'll give you an example. If you cut with a knife cottage cheese or cream cheese. No, cream cheese, if it's soft, then you're not using pressure. But if it's a block of cheese, let's say, then you're using pressure. If it's a vegetable, you know, you're going to be using pressure. No, Kedei Klipa is in addition to the 60 times. Because you had in other words, like this. If you'd have chicken soup, okay, hot chicken soup, and the dairy spoon that was used that day stirred the pot. So we learned the other days, if you have 60 times the food in the pot against the spoon, it's all good. But over there, you don't need any cutting off anything. You don't need to remove anything. Why? Because you didn't use any pressure. You're just stirring it. There's no pressure. With a knife, I'll give you another example. What happens if somebody cut? Okay, if somebody takes a meat spoon and eats cereal, cold cereal and milk, okay? Takes a meat spoon and eats cold cereal and milk. You don't have to do anything. The cereal is good. It's called cold.
It's clean.
Cereal's cold, clean. Just you have to wash off the spoon in cold water. Okay? What happens though if somebody cut a block of cheese, cold cheese? This would be a block, the hard cheeses, whatever, yeah? You cut a block of cheese with a cold meat knife. Everything's cold, right? So normally if I would scoop out cheese with a meat knife, with a meat spoon, it wouldn't be an issue. But if I, by mistake, cut a block of cheese with a meat knife, and it's all cold, it's clean, I still have to cut off a little bit at the size where I cut. Why? Because the pressure of the knife still makes it go into, and there's a little bit, it's called shamnunis, there's a little bit of oil on the knife, so that's going to make it go. Not only that, I'm going to have to kasher the knife. But how do I kasher the knife? You don't have to kasher in boiling hot water. You have to, again, how did it become treif? We learned already many times. The way it becomes treif is the way you have to kosher it. If it becomes treif through liquid, you kasher it with liquid, right? Boiling hot water. If it's something that you directly fire, then you have to kosher it directly with fire. Okay? Now, if this is a meat knife, and I cut this block of cheese, okay? So the cheese, you just have to cut off on the two sides a little bit. How do I kasher the knife? In other words, how did the dairy go into the knife? Through pressure. So you have to stick, this says in halacha, you have to stick the knife into ground 10 times, hard ground, in different places. Because again, sticking the pressure into the ground is going to remove the cheese that went into the knife through pressure.
Why 10 times? Why not once?
Because Chum said 10 times is what does it.
It won't push it in?
No, it's going to take it out.
So if the knife wasn't used that day, then there's no Indian purpose.
There is. You don't need 60 times the meat, but the place where you cut, you still have to cut off. No. No, you can't. You have to wait until it cools off.
No.
What? No.
The feta cheese that you cut with halachic knife, now you want to do the block of the feta cheese, you have to do with the...
Oh, that, yeah, that, I thought you were talking about the meat again. No, the cold cheese, you cut off a little piece with a dairy knife, yes. But you have to cut off a little piece that it shouldn't, because of the pressure of the knife. But that's only, by the way, when you have, I'll give you another example. What happens, is also a very practical thing. You go to a fish market, okay? Now you need to buy fish. So let's say you're not going to a kosher fish market. You're going to a, whatever. And you see the whole fish, you see, let's say, a salmon, right? And you see the skin on the fish, you see the scales on the fish, okay? But they're gonna cut it for you, okay? Now, ideally, if you can bring your own knife, is better, because their knives are not kosher, right? But they're gonna cut the fish. So it's not a very big problem, because most of the knives that they're using in the store is only for fish. They don't use it in the meat department. Every department has their own knives. You know, they're not going to use it in the vegetable department. They use it in the fish department. So over there, halachically, all you really have to do is wash it off well. You don't even have to cut off a piece.
Even if they use for non-kosher fish?
Yeah.
So is the flesh of the fish considered luft of the skina?
There is, but over there, Vaad Din, there's a lot of different reasons why. It's not for now. That washing it off well would be enough.
Fish skin is very soft.
It's not the same duchke as sakin. First of all, so the raw fish is not so soft.
Very soft.
I don't know.
Maybe salmon. I mean, salmon is definitely soft.
I don't know. I don't go to the markets to buy fish, personally. I mean, my wife does that.
If we have a dairy knife and we cut onion and we put onion in the top of the meat, that's the same rule, or that's the same?
That's worse. No. Because anytime you cut a sharp food, sharp means onion, lemon, garlic, what are those peppers called? Jalapeno, you know, those type of... Huh?
Jalapeno?
Jalapeno peppers, or anything sharp.
Red things.
Whatever, anything that's sharp, if I cut it with a clean meat knife, even if it wasn't used for 24 hours. I didn't use the knife for a week. Now I'm cutting up onions. I chop up onions with a meat knife that wasn't used for 24 hours. Nevertheless, the sharpness of the onion, this is what halacha says, makes the the blemished taste in the knife, it makes it unblemished. It freshens the taste that's blemished in the knife. So therefore, for instance, practically speaking, if I cut an onion with a meat knife, that onion is meat. I don't have to wait 6 hours after eating it, like you would have to meat. But I can't put it on a lox and bagels, cream cheese sandwich. It's mamash has a din of meat.
Whole onion.
No, it depends how you cut, how much you cut. If you slice an onion, yeah, the whole onion is halachic. If you slice it in half only, so 2 centimeters on each side is halachic, or milk, whatever. So people have to be very careful, because a lot of times people cut an onion, they use half of it, then they put it into the refrigerator, yeah, and then another member of the family who doesn't know what the other person did comes and takes the knife, the onion, starts cutting it with the opposite gender. You know, the original time was cut with meat, now they're cutting it with the milk knife. You're making the onion tray. And then they cut it on, they use it on their pizza or on their bagels and cream cheese sandwich or into a dairy soup, whatever. You end up with big shilas and halacha, the whole thing might be treif. So it's a problem. So people have to know, especially with sharp foods. The best thing, generally speaking, if for a house, to have what's called parv knives. Knives that are not dairy and not meat. Whenever you want to cut vegetables, you always cut it with the parv knife, so then you never have a problem. Milk to milk, it's always parv. You can do with what you want. What?
Is this what they call chazar in New York?
No.
And also, will horseradish be part of this?
Horseradish is also very sharp.